Back to Build Without Chaos. Today, I'm joined by Ivo van de Brand, former CMO of Too Good To Go, where he helped the company scale globally while bringing calm and structure to a business that was growing fast and feeling the strain. What I love about Ivo's story is that it's not just about purpose, it's about precision. He took an organization driven by mission and helped it find operational clarity, profitability, and focus without losing its soul. We're calling this episode Order in the Storm, and we're unpacking what it really takes to bring structure to chaos when the stakes are high and growth won't wait. Ivo, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me. That is a brilliant intro. I'm a bit humbled by that, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. I'd love to start off and just learn about your journey in joining Too Good To Go and the framework once you got there and what life was like.
Yeah, cool. So I was the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Too Good To Go for about 3 years, between 2022 and the summer of 2025. And for those who do not know Too Good To Go is a marketplace that was built on the insights that food waste is a terrible challenge. So it's a Danish company. It was founded by a bunch of people in Denmark 10 years ago. And they realized that 40% of all food in the world goes to waste. So 40 being 40. That's crazy when you realize almost 800 million people don't know where their next meal is going to come from. The cost of the global economy is $1.2 trillion every year. And it's also responsible for 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So it's also quite a major contributor to climate change. And they came up with quite a brilliant idea to solve this problem, or at least address it, at the end of the supply chain. So restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, retailers who sell food and have food left unsold at the end of the day, to build a marketplace where consumers can go and buy that food off them. So if you take the US and you take an example, take Pete's Coffee, which is a partner of Too Good To Go. Pete's Coffee will probably know they have about $100 left of good foods left unsold at the end of the day. They don't know if it's a pain au chocolat or a blueberry muffin, but they kind of know what the value is. And how Too Good To Go works is they can package it up in surprise bags. Surprise, because you don't know if it's that muffin or the pain au chocolat. And then users can look on the map and see in the local area if anything is available, reserve a bag, pay through the app, and then go into store and pick it up at the end of the day. Yeah. So kind of a win-win-win. The business gets to sell its unsold food instead of throwing it away. The user gets good food from local favorites at great value for money. And the planet wins because collectively we help to reduce food waste. I mean, I joined 3 years ago. The company was already in 17 countries, so it had grown incredibly fast, scaled internationally across Western Europe and the US and Canada, already 50 million users, so a lot of users. But it was definitely still very much a startup. So it was quite scrappy. It was all about speed, speed, speed. It was all about growth, growth, growth. And the remit was help us set us up for the next stage of growth, both structurally and in terms of how we elevate our professionalism and the excellence in execution, and also help us build a culture that can help us scale to a truly household brand. So, yeah, incredible remit, I think, and an incredible company.
So how big was your team there?
So when I joined, the team was quite big. I would say actually the team was very big, because the way the company had scaled is they had duplicated all these markets based on the existing playbook. So it was very much, this works, new markets, hire designers, hire PR people, hire all these marketing functions. And I think when I joined, the company had realized this, when I was 17 countries, and it's impossible to manage all these business functions. And also we were quite bloated in certain areas because we didn't really need all of those people in all of those local markets to the extent that we had them. So we had around 160 people in marketing, just in marketing.
160 people just in marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. And in your words, it was a startup functioning as a startup with a marketing org of 160 people. To me, that is like the recipe of chaos to begin with.
Yeah, I think so. We were so decentralized, I think, which added to that definition of chaos, I think,
Yeah.
because every market was erected to say, go, 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 grow, 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 do what you need to do. And I think what we found is there was definitely limited best practice sharing or generally sharing across the markets. So then obviously you cater towards the lowest common denominator because everyone makes their own mistakes. And you can't just build from collective learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And a lot of people who join Too Good To Go for all the right reasons join because they want to save the planet and they really buy into the mission. And I think that passion and that drive is amazing when you want to build something. But also there's a flip side, which is it means more to people. And a lot of people started initiatives and programs and campaigns and actions that were super well intended, but didn't necessarily build on any agreed, aligned, collective strategy, direction, or focus. So I would say the biggest thing contributing to the chaos beyond pure growth and dispersion across 17 markets was the fact that I think we were doing many good things, but not necessarily the right things.
Yeah.
And this was all driven by people just wanting to do amazing things, but there was no focus.
So you have 160 people in your org. You have a mandate to grow efficiently. Everyone is full of mission and purpose, which might also mean emotional. Where do you even start? Like, what's the first step?
Yeah, I think the first step was structure. I think we realized that we needed to have a far less decentralized organization. So we changed the operating model. We created a cluster structure. So North America, Central Europe, Southern Europe, Northern Europe, etc. So you can cascade information, direction, focus a lot more. We created global centers of excellence so that we could really elevate the baseline of everything we did, but also had a bit more focus in how we did things. And again, I think feed off the highest common denominator as opposed to the lowest. And we worked really hard, especially the operations team and the marketing team, to identify across all of these markets what are the things that work best and work best across all the markets. So focus on the commonalities and then focus all of our attention on doing those very well and stop doing the things that were less proven to be super valuable or super impactful.
Right.
And I think the latter thing was tough because when it means so much to people to do something and to contribute to a cause, and they have ideas that are not insensible, they're good ideas, but not necessarily focused priorities, to then say we need to stop doing those because we need to focus. It puts a whole different spin on the meaning, kill your darlings, I guess, because people get really, really emotional.
I want to dive into that because I come from the world of B2B SaaS where you don't really show your emotions, right? Okay, it's kind of just how it goes. So, what is it like restructuring when everyone is so passionate about the focus of the company and where you're going and their ideas?
Yeah, I think it's super tough. I mean, this was my first time CMO role. I'd had
Yeah.
leadership roles and I'd led teams, but never at this scale and also never being in the highest position. It's quite interesting also when you realize that all of a sudden you're the CMO and there's not still someone above you. So all of a sudden the buck stops with you and it's all on you.
Yeah.
And I think trying to create order in the chaos in the sense of changing the operating model and making structural changes and designing org charts, that's all very rational and academic, right? That's cool, but that's relatively easy. But then it is leading through that change when you say it means so much to people. That was the biggest learning experience by far. And I think my biggest realization was it really isn't about me. So if you're having conversations with people and you have to explain why things need to change. It's very easy to get defensive when people start shouting at you
Right.
and to basically engage in an argument. And I learned quite quickly, you just need to listen and just, it's not about your emotions, deal with those at home. What you think, what you feel is not for that place. You need to really listen and empathize. And empathy doesn't mean just putting on a serious face and nodding and pretend that you care. You actually need to listen to where people are, why people think certain things are difficult or a bad idea or hurtful, and then try to give them the clarity and the inspiration somehow to take them from where they are to where you want them to be. And that really starts with listening and composure and just staying calm. I think that's really important.
So, what about the people that stayed? How did you carry them along that journey?
Yeah, I think what I just said applies as much, if not more, even to the people who stay. I think I kind of distinguish between two types of. We have to make a lot of tough decisions, and I think, and I don't even mean tough in the sense of you need to structurally change an organization. I kind of see two dimensions. One is on the kill your darlings piece. So it's all these incredible initiatives that are designed purely to drive impact, the mission, et cetera, et cetera. Some good ideas, some slightly less good ideas, all with the best of intentions. To having to say no to a lot of those because we have finite resources and we need to prioritize the ones that drive the most impact. That is often met with emotion because people came up with those ideas and they care really deeply. And so then having to say no, I think, is one thing. And to then get them inspired again to follow the new direction and focus on ideas that weren't necessarily theirs, I think that's tough.
Yeah.
But then there's this whole other dimension, which is basically just scale up reality, which is you're constantly recalibrating the expectations of what good looks like. The world around us is changing. Technology is changing. We are changing and we're growing really fast. So stuff changes all the time. That's a lot of moving parts. And I think acknowledging to people that that's tough, be vulnerable as a leader, that you're trying to figure this out as you go along, but you don't know everything either. And at the same time, also recognizing to people, I get it. This is hard. I get why you're struggling with this, but this is how we're going to solve it together. This is where we're going to go. We're going to focus on these things, and that's how we're going to get there. But you need to really, I think, listen.
You mentioned vulnerability. Can we tap on that? Because I think that's something, especially in the CMO seat, we tend to idolize the CMO, thinking that they have it all together. They know what's going on. They're driving the ship. And largely you do. You're the CMO. But I think that it's also very humanistic to show vulnerability. And how did you tap into that? Like, how were you communicating that, or what did that look like in your org?
Yeah, I think it's a super, super interesting topic for a couple of reasons. And marketing is an inherently broad discipline, right? There's so many different elements. You've got brand, you've got comms, you've got performance, you've got marketing tech. Now you've got AI, you've got analytics and data. You're never going to get a CMO who's the best individual contributor in all of those and is also a good leader. And because it was my first CMO role, it took me a while to just be okay with the fact that I also wasn't the best in all of those areas. I was very well aware of that and my shortcomings, and I have imposter syndrome just like everyone else. But I wasn't necessarily super comfortable sharing that because I thought that was a sign of weakness. And I think the more and more I learned how valuable it is to have those open conversations with people about their struggles, the more I also learned to just share how it was also tough for me.
Yeah.
And without making it about me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because what I didn't want is people to think, oh, boo-hoo, he's got a tough job or whatever. That was not the objective. It's just, I also find it hard that we thought we had this all figured out and we were growing really rapidly, and all of a sudden we have to pivot because our user base is so big now that actually retention becomes the biggest focus and strategic priorities shift. And I also struggle with that sometimes because I finally thought I had it figured out, and then we have to start all over again.
Yeah.
But and then you try to, I think, put the excitement in there, how cool that is because we get to figure it out together. But I think you just there's kind of a flywheel where you do it more, you have those conversations more, and then you build trust and you build confidence with people. And I'm a firm believer that confidence reinforces competence. So if you can give people that sense of confidence, you see how it works and how it builds into something more positive, and then you just do it more and more and more, which is super cool because you build really powerful relationships.
It's such a shift for people who are maybe a little bit older in the workplace, because I remember back in the day, you didn't show any vulnerability. You showed up at work, you got your job done, and you walked away. But now I think just how the world's turning, and maybe this is chaos in the world now. People are showing up with more humanity, more humility, more vulnerability when it comes to different working situations and communicating that. And I mean, I think it's something that I definitely work on that myself, how to show more vulnerability in the workplace. So, do you think that that's something that helped you in a mission-driven environment? Is it something that you kind of had to learn there, or is it something that you would take onto your next company as well?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's a good reflection. I think it's definitely more prevalent now than it was, first of all. I think it also helps that we now have the language and the terminology to articulate it. I'm pretty sure people would feel it, but then society didn't sort of stimulate them to articulate it, but also they didn't have the language or feel comfortable with the language to express it in a way that was
Right.
mutually understood. And I think even the younger generations now, they are so comfortable talking about it. I don't think they're necessarily more vulnerable or more sensitive. I just think they are so proficient in articulating it. I think there's
Yeah.
definitely a language set there. I think for me, going through so much change and driving so much change in an environment that is quite open and honest about their feelings, let me just walk away from the term emotional, I think also taught me how important integrity is to me. So I think it brought out a lot of my own values and what I actually feel important intrinsically that I wasn't even aware of. So I feel trust and transparency and being open and honest is really important to me. And I I learned that by reflecting on some of the tougher conversations and what gave me energy, what drained my energy, and I just found myself more in an authentic manner. If that makes sense.
It does. It
And
does.
then and then when I realized it also became more natural and I became more comfortable with it. And then it just grows and grows and grows. So I think to
Right.
answer your last question, would you take that with you? I think that's now kind of who I am. And it's also how I now actively explain to people who I am. Whereas I would not have done that 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I would have led with marketing expertise. And now I lead with, I try to be a good leader with integrity and empathy and compassion and give people clarity and focus. Very
Yeah.
different.
You know what's interesting about chaos, and something I'm learning myself, is you learn about yourself in chaotic situations. You don't necessarily learn when things are calm, right?
Yeah.
It's when it's chaotic and when it's just something in your environment that you need to start looking inward and realizing how you react to that environment and why you're reacting that way. Because one thing I've noticed doing this podcast, having these discussions, the chaos never goes away. It doesn't matter what environment you're in, right? I mean, you could
Yeah.
walk out your front door, it's chaotic right now. So it's really about how you manage it. And it's almost like it's an invitation to change yourself or learn more about yourself. That's what I'm starting to see, which basically is what you just said, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think the thing you need in chaos is clarity, right? Clarity and focus.
Yep.
How am I going to navigate this? Where am I going? What are the two things I need to focus on instead of all of this stuff going on? And I think if chaos can stimulate that, trying to organize your world, and you can also do the self internally in inflection, I think it's super powerful. If you can then also realize actually what motivates me, what drives me, what do I need, and what are the noises I need to block off. Because I think imposter syndrome is a great example. Imposter syndrome I'm fascinated by because it's essentially the best marketer ever in your head. And it's just, and it's very hard to argue with imposter syndrome because it's you talking to you and you obviously know yourself best. So it's so bloody effective.
It's
And I
horrible.
think, yeah, terrible. But I think when you recognize, hold on a minute, this is me, this is my voice. So I can take ownership of those voices and choose to say, I hear you, but I'm just going to not act on you for a second because I've got a job to do. I think if you can get to that point with just plenty of self reflection and taking control of your own emotions and how you feel, what you focus on mentally and in the workplace, I think is super powerful.
Yeah. I mean, what's that famous phrase? Master your mind before your mind masters you. That's essentially what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
good one.
but it's a good one because it's true. You can't let yourself spiral out. And I think in chaotic environments, especially mission driven ones, it's very easy to kind of go down that path
Yeah,
and get absorbed by other people's emotions.
totally.
Yeah. Okay, so you brought the team along through this kind of chaotic storm. It sounds like you had to maybe do some repositioning of strategic objectives that were coming down from the CEO. Now you're on the other side of chaos. What is it like on the other side of the storm? What are some benefits? Let's swing it that way.
Yeah, I think theoretically, I think it's nice when you come out of the storm and everyone's on board and you feel that people all have bought into the direction again. I think that's really, really nice because I think on the other end of that storm, there's an element of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So now everyone is more together, more aligned, all focused on the same thing. But then I think to your point, there's always storm. The storm doesn't go away. You're still in a scale up. So yes, you have changed the structure, and yes, we are set up to learn more from each other and have more collaboration across regions, etc., etc. But hey ho, problems change all the time. You fix
True.
something, and then something else becomes a problem or a challenge or a focal point, and then you have to find a new way to solve that. So I think the interesting and fascinating thing about scale up is the storm never goes away. You constantly just have to reset new priorities. And I think as a leader, that's the job. It's okay. So we set these objectives, great. We applied focus, great. Now we have different focus.
Yeah.
And then you just go again and again and again with high energy.
How do you work with maybe a priority that is shifted that's come from the CEO and communicating that to your team while also showing vulnerability and that you understand what they're going through? Because I see that
Yeah.
as a challenge.
So I think the good thing about Too Good To Go is we put a lot of effort in our leadership team, executive leadership team, to be super aligned and to make decisions together. So we were super fortunate that there was rarely a situation where one person would say, "This is what's going to happen. Make it happen." We were not that org, but doesn't change the fact that an executive leadership team can make a decision, and then you have to go and deliver that message, and it means doing things or killing darlings or maybe moving away from initiatives that people really enjoy. I think that's where the vulnerability and the authenticity really comes in. So you need to really stay close to being honest and open and really clearly articulating why a certain decision is made and why certain implications are regrettable, and you understand that that's difficult and tough. But this is why we need to prioritize these things. I think you just need to be super openly honest. And again, I think I said this on a different podcast the other day. I think the listening is super important because you convey the news and then you need to really listen to the room, because you don't want to project the things that are hard or difficult or annoying or the negatives. You don't want to project those from your vantage point. You want to understand what their vantage point is. So if you want to define the best path to a destination, you need to figure out where people are at the time. Because I might be here going there, but if they're there, that's the path, not this one.
Right. Really
I
just
think,
listening in.
yeah, I think it's really, really, it's so underrated, I think, to just
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah. I think if you just communicate why is it actually happening? And you kind of go down that path, that eases a lot of concerns. It's the unknowns that create ideas with people that can start to fester and create maybe a toxicity that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, I think, to add meaning to the why is also to articulate the process that we went through in order to get to the why.
Yeah.
That this wasn't just a person waking up on a Tuesday saying, "I've got the answer. This is what we're going to do." I think, but in many cases, there's like a lot of due diligence and really careful deliberation and discussions and outside-in perspectives. And I think you don't have to say all of those things, but just make it clear that there was a process, and based on that process, a decision was made. Balancing pros and cons, I think, is that too adds value. I think.
Yeah. Let's hope decisions aren't being made that way. Someone waking up on a random Tuesday saying, you know what, let's just shift. Let's just go in this direction.
Yeah, because we feel
Sometimes
like it.
I've been in environments where I've thought that maybe that was going on, but let's give the benefit of the doubt where it's more strategic from there.
Yeah, yeah, but that already is a communications problem, then, right?
Yeah,
Because then clearly they didn't explain what the process had been, which gives you an opening to even doubt the process.
that's true. Yeah.
Because actually, someone would say, "Hey, you know what? We're the kind of company where we've got one person in an ivory tower at the top. That person woke up and they looked at their cat in the morning, and decision is we're going to pivot." You could kind of respect that in a way. That's kind of cool.
I mean, here's the way I look at it. If the person in the ivory tower, quoting you, is doing something like that, then the results of the decision are on the person in the ivory tower, right? So if
Yeah.
it's done in a unilateral view and made that way, then that's that person's decision, and hopefully the good things come from that, but we don't know.
No, but then at least everyone knows what they're signing up for when they follow that
True. True.
direction, right?
Right. And that essentially in a scaling environment can be what you communicate, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
But yeah,
So
ideally, you don't make a decision that way.
yeah, I don't either. I think it's better to have alignment. It's safer. You think through things. Other people have different opinions, and I think that's what welcomes a positive culture, right? Is
Yeah.
everyone's involvement and thinking through something that isn't necessarily the way you would.
I mean, I mean, I would never want to be part of an environment where someone looks at their cat and completely pivots to business. But I think I don't know if you heard of Roger Martin. He's a very, very famous, well-known thinker on strategy, and he's written a lot of books. And I think he teaches at the University of Toronto. And he talks a lot about integrative thinking, which is essentially embracing all of these different perspectives, and ideally perspectives that aren't part of your normal day-to-day conversations, and actively embracing this notion of we never have this conversation, maybe we should, and embracing all of the people who would give you who would have an opinion that is conflicting to yours, and then based on all of that input, then you make the most resilient strategic decisions, which I think
Yeah.
is the way to go.
That is the way to go. I think that's what we're doing, and it's what we should be doing, I should say. I think a lot of people would say, Oh, if only that one person quit, or, I don't get along with that person. If they left, it would be such a better work environment. But if you actually listen to what that person's saying, there could be some value there that you input into decision making. And isn't this how the world's supposed to turn? I don't know. Seems
I'd
like it
hope
to
so.
me.
Yeah, agreed.
So, if you were to give other marketing leaders some advice that are currently in the storm and need to scale and need to grow, what would you say? What would be maybe your top couple key points to communicate?
I would say, first of all, manage your own internal voice, because I think,
Yeah.
like I said, it's marketing is such a broad function, and there's so much coming at us right now. If you're an integrated marketing leader, to stay on top of everything that's happening in the tech landscape, with all of the implications on marketing, obviously, plus the latest in marketing technology, plus brand comms, growth, life cycle, CRM, it's a lot.
It is a
And I
lot.
think it's good to recognize that I'm pretty sure no one knows everything, and that every marketing leader is trying to figure a lot of this out.
Yeah.
And I think just being at least honest with yourself that that's the case, I think is step one. Because I think you'll be a better leader for that, where you recognize that no one is expecting you to have all the answers. People are at most expecting you to ask the right questions. I think that's number one. And then secondly, I think really try to just constantly be clear in your mind, where are we going? How are we going to get there? And for each and every one of your functions or peers or however you've structured your team, be super clear on what the focus priorities are, so that you can give people that clarity and that focus, so that those people don't need to endure the chaos, but can just walk through the storm with clarity and focus.
Right.
And then thirdly would be listen to people. And people talk a lot about empathy, but really care about where people are and try to help acknowledge that and see people and give them confidence and give them direction, but based on where they are, not on where you want them to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. I agree.
And it's nice. It's
It
nice
is.
because you've got such nice conversations. I mean, I remember having a conversation with someone. So I used to always, before I joined Too Good To Go, I used to always start every meeting with, "How are you doing?" Seems like a good, sensible question, but then actually wanting to hear the answer. But now I have conversations where I just openly, proactively acknowledge, and I go, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I see that you're in a tough spot. This changed, and then this changed, and then you got your head around that, and then that changed. Just want to acknowledge that's tough, and I wouldn't be surprised if you've struggled with that, or if you still struggle with it. I just want you to know I've got your back, and if there's anything I could do to help you, let me know, and we'll figure it out. But if you're good and you're working through it, all good. Just know that I see you." I think that's so nice.
It's so simple and so effective. It really
Yeah,
is. That's all you have to say is, I see you struggling and let me know I have an open door of how I can
yeah,
help. It goes a long way.
yeah, and it works both ways too, right? Because I think it also, I read somewhere, and I can't quote the source on this, that one of the biggest contributors to mental health is expressing gratitude. Did you know that?
I didn't, but that's lovely.
I mean, talk about easy commodities to generate mental health. So if you can be kind, and if you do see people and you can acknowledge that, surely everyone benefits, including yourself.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. Just be nice. That's really what we need to be doing here. Be
Yeah.
kind to people
Yeah.
and hear them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could still set, because I think on the storm point, you can be nice, you can be kind, you can have integrity, and you can acknowledge people and give them confidence, but still setting a slightly uncomfortable aspirational level of expectation, right?
Right.
You can still push excellence and push progress, but be kind, but essentially having balance in how you do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think being kind and having integrity means that you can't set high standards. I think you can.
You can. And we should.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's just knowing and acknowledging that they're high standards and you're there for the team. It's all
exactly.
showing the other side. Well, on that note, this has been a lovely conversation. Thank you so much. I love how you've really framed walking through the storm with clarity and structure instead of letting the storm overtake you, which is, I think, the learning lesson of today's episode. So I appreciate
Nice.
you joining.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.